Hi guys, welcome to our daily encounter. In Hosea chapter 8 and verse 7, the Lord gives them a good lesson on cause and effect, and gives us a good lesson on cause and effect as well. Where it says in verse 7, "For they sow the wind, and they reap the whirlwind. The standing grain has no heads, it yields no grain. Should it yield, strangers would swallow it up." So very similar to what we read in Galatians chapter 6. Whatever a man sows, that's what he will reap. And here he's saying that Israel had sown the wind. And that's a picture of vanity. You sow the wind, you're not going to get anything out of it. And so sowing the wind is basically living your life, investing your life into things that will not produce anything of any worth. For the Israelites back then, this mainly would include idol worship, serving idols, setting up these idols, building these idols, and then sacrificing to the idols was all vain. It wouldn't do any good because these idols were nothing. They couldn't hear, they couldn't see, they couldn't speak, they couldn't do anything. It was vanity. But a lot more could be included as well. They're violating God's law, living for themselves, not loving their neighbor, taking advantage of one another, stealing from one another. The list could go on, but basically living a self-centered life would produce a vain life, which is what they were doing. And as a result, he says they reap the whirlwind. In other words, disaster comes because they're setting themselves up for disaster by sowing to the wind. So if they're sowing to the wind, what does the wind produce? A whirlwind that'll come and bring destruction. And so them living after these vain things, living a self-centered life, an idol worshiping life, was going to bring destruction. And that really is what a big part of Hosea is all about. But then even if the whirlwind didn't come, even if it all wasn't destroyed, even then the standing grain has no heads. It yields no grain. In other words, it's false hope. If you have the standing grain with no heads, it's like, well, as you're watching it grow up, you're thinking, okay, I'm going to get some grain from this plant. But as it grows up, there's really no head, and there's no grain there to reap a harvest. And so that's what a life of vanity does. It produces false hope. It makes you think that things are going to turn out good, and this is the way we should order our lives, and that we're going to reap pleasure and comfort and the good life. But really, it doesn't produce at all. And it doesn't produce what it promises. And it says, even if it did yield something, even if you did see something productive come, it says, should it yield, strangers would swallow it up. So there's really no chance of them getting anything good out of the way that they're living. They're sowing the wind, which is vanity, doesn't have any effect on producing any type of harvest. The only thing it does produce is destruction, a whirlwind. Even if something does grow up, it doesn't have anything that produces food that would be of any benefit. And then even if it produced food, then other people would come and take the food away. And so this is a good life lesson for us. What are we living for? Are we sowing the wind? Are we really seeking the things of heaven? Are we really living as citizens of the kingdom of heaven with our minds set on things above? Or are we constantly living for the things below? Are we constantly toiling and working and sowing and laboring just for things that won't, in the ultimate sense, really produce anything for us? And maybe even in some cases will reap the whirlwind, will actually cause destructive things in our lives. But even if they don't cause destructive things in our life, they just won't produce. They might make us think that we're going to have pleasure and enjoyment and satisfaction, but it just won't work. It doesn't work out that way. And even if we do get a little bit of that, we know that ultimately death will take away any benefit that we think that we have derived from sowing to the wind. So we want to live a life that is intentional in setting our hearts towards the Lord, loving the Lord with all of our heart, soul, mind, and strength, loving our neighbor as ourselves, engaged in loving acts, engaged in the spiritual disciplines, cultivating a good spiritual life, but at the same time sharing spiritual truths with other people, and being involved in meeting the physical needs of others, the emotional needs of others, the spiritual needs of others, not getting caught up in worldliness, but keeping our eyes on the prize. Not being self-centered, but being kingdom-centered and living our lives for the Lord. So let's think about that now as we do our reading. Let's focus on that today. Let's stop sowing to the wind. Let's start sowing some good seed that will produce a wonderful crop. So with that, guys, I do thank you for watching the video today. Hope you guys have a great day. Love you guys. God bless.